Thank you for hosting this. I'm Brian O'Keefe with the Drug Enforcement Administration, New England Field Division, more specifically the Manchester District Office. Tonight we have Teen Challenge, which is a not-for-profit in Manchester, New Hampshire. Alex is going to come up and talk about what they do in Teen Challenge and how they keep people sober. I think it's a phenomenal program. I dealt with it a lot in my time in Manchester, but Alex, I'd love for you to come up and introduce the guys. Thank you, I appreciate it.
So, my name is Abilito. I am the Admissions and Resident Life Coordinator at Adult and Teen Challenge, New Hampshire. So what Teen Challenge is, or Adult and Teen Challenge is, it's a 12 to 15 month inpatient residential program for adults and teens, 18 and older. It's not a youth facility, for people that struggle primarily with drugs and alcohol. We take them in and we have a 5-phase program in which we take an individual and we help them really understand why they do the things that they don't want to do, really deal with the things from the root and not so much a secondary issue, because we all know that addiction is a secondary issue. There's always something that's deeper within that causes us to try to find escape or comfort in this, in substances. There's also a variety of other things, but our program focuses mainly on drugs and alcohol. With us, we have 4 residents that are, some are 30 days in, some are just over 30 days, some are 6 months, 7 months, and they're going to share their story and just what they were doing, what happened in their youth, and how they got to where they are, and really maybe touch upon their hope for their future now. So the first one speaking will be Zach.
In the beginning, I'll jump to 13 years old, started smoking weed, started smoking cigarettes. Thought it was nothing, having a good time, trying to hang out with the cool kids. Thought I was cool, happy, just hanging out, whoop-de-doo. And by the age of 15, I was handed perks for migraines, and I liked that as well. So I started doing perks. My dad really wasn't around because he was addicted to perks and heroin. My mom was always at work, so I was just left to take care of my brother, my sister, and myself growing up. I got to 16, 17 years old, and because I was smoking weed, wanted to see what else was out there. I heard about other stuff, started doing cocaine. Cocaine, showing up to school or skipping school. I would skip school a lot. AB student, all the way up to 10th grade. As soon as I started doing cocaine, the grades started dropping, depression got worse, started hearing things, not sleeping, just line after line. Thought I was having fun. I have no good memories on it. Went from cocaine to crack, got introduced to crack, and crack really took right off. Way worse than anything, really. Crack would do anything for it. I would take my mom's money for it. I would go and beat people up for it. I just needed it, or so I thought. But in reality, I was just trying to run away from issues that I had, from mental issues to physical issues. I didn't want to deal with it, didn't know how to deal with it. My dad passed away. 3 months later, my oldest daughter passed away at the age of 18. Age of 18, really got introduced to meth. Meth was brought on a lot more mental issues. Started hearing more things that weren't there. Started seeing more things that weren't there. Eating mushrooms at the same time. Dropping acid, little papers of acid, just constantly. Smoking DMT. I remember walking down a flight of stairs and finding myself on the couch because of DMT. I thought I overdosed on it, but apparently that's the truth. That was my 4th time doing it, and that was my experience with it. Finding yourself on a couch, sleeping, not knowing what's going on because you are looking at yourself, will change anybody. You can say you've done it multiple times and it will change you. I lost hope, no hope, wanted to die, had 2 kids, lost custody of my kids because of drugs, because drugs were more important. I wanted that next high. I wanted that thrill, is what I called it. I wanted to be awake and be around my kids, but in reality it was more, I wanted to be awake so I could do more. My mom got custody of the kids, and because I had past stuff that I had to deal with, didn't know how to deal with it, and I wasn't looking for help. No hope, wanted to die, multiple suicide attempts on my life. Multiple. I just really, there is hope. If you guys are thinking about smoking, weed, actively smoking anything, there is hope. It might not be from your parents, it might not be from your friends. A stranger could be your biggest supporter. If you have to go to a stranger to get help, do it, because this road is not, it's not a road you want. There is hope from anybody. Somebody knows somebody for help, and I highly recommend going to get it.
Yeah, my story is kind of a snowball effect, you know, things just started piling up more and more as years went on, you know. Didn't have the easiest childhood. My parents got divorced at a young age, and the man my mother started dating wasn't the greatest guy. He was a child abuser, and you know, he made me and my step siblings a product of sexual molestation. And you know, he went to prison later on, you know, when I was like 12 years old. And once I started finding out all the things that was happening to me as a child through sexual education, you know, I started feeling comfortable in my own skin. And you know, once I found that first joint, I felt comfortable for once, you know, and I loved it. And it all started off with marijuana. And yeah, marijuana continued to Xanax and Oxycontin. It was really big in my neighborhood at the time. So I fell in love with those things right away. And through my drug use, I got arrested at a really young age. And I got sent to the youth detention center for 6 months. Can't say I hated it, I loved it actually. You know, being around all the big bad boys. And right when I got out, went right back to selling pot, selling drugs. And my mother saw the road I was going down again. And she sent me back down to live with my father down in Billerica, Massachusetts. And my little brother got sick, and we had no idea what was going on with him. And you know, I was clean for a little bit, but once we found out that my little brother had cancer, I went right back to smoking weed and doing pills. And through my drug use, I became very depressed. And one day when my father went to go visit my little brother getting chemotherapy, I tried killing myself. You know, I took a bunch of painkillers and Xanax and drinking a bottle of vodka. I woke up in a coma like a week later, and I got sent to my first mental hospital. And you know, life didn't start getting better after that. Tried many more times in my life. It got to a certain point where my father couldn't handle it anymore, and he sent me back to live with my mother. You know, my mother was actually living up here in New Hampshire at the time, and her eardrums ruptured on an airplane, and she was hooked on her prescription medication. She was like prescribed Percocets and Xanax, and she was a heavy alcoholic at that time of her life. And me and her always got into arguments. You know, me and her would both be high. You know, because at that time I was able to do whatever I want. You know, because she was just so oblivious to everything. And her addiction got her to the point where, you know, she brought me into a room one night, and she was high as heck, I was high as heck, and she was telling me that she couldn't afford the place we were living at anymore, and how she needed to go to Detox. You know, being upset, you know, I just went to go sleep at a friend's house for a couple nights, and, you know, when I finally came home, she wasn't joking, she wasn't there, she never came back. So I was 17 years old, I was homeless for the first time. I was sleeping outside, sleeping at a friend's house. And never really told anybody because how ashamed I was because of all of it. You know, I saw it as weakness. It wasn't until actually my friend Sean Bossinger, who lives like right across the street, found me in a park in Manchester while he was chilling with some of my friends, and he took me in. But you know, I continued experimenting with drugs, you know, along with weed and Xanax. When I was 18 years old, I mainlined heroin for the first time. You know, when I was dating this girl, she introduced it to me, and you know, I was just trying to impress her, try to do anything she was doing, you know, and you know, I fell in love with it completely. You know, I went on a run for about 2 years. It wasn't until I was 20 years old, I got locked up for the first time for 2 years. Got arrested down in Massachusetts, and I spent 2 years in Middleton jail. And you know, when I got out, I went to work. I didn't go back to drugs right away. I started working in the north end of Boston at a multi-million-dollar restaurant, Regina's Pizza. And you know, slowly but surely, I started smoking pot again, started drinking again, and you know, again, another girl I started dating brought me down a dark path. I was introduced to crack cocaine, and that just took my life over. You know, it was worse than heroin, worse than any other drug that I ever did in my life. And crack cocaine sent me to homelessness. You know, I lost my job from stealing a lot of money. I lost my apartment from not being able to pay the bills. And, you know, I was stealing from family members. You know, I stole like a couple $1,000s from my father, you know, right underneath his nose. And I ended up in Skid Row in Boston for the past couple of years. I'm 28 now. That happened when I was 25. So for the past 3 years, I've been homeless in Boston. Addicted to fentanyl, addicted to crack, overdosing left and right, in and out of detox, and, you know, kept going to halfway houses, not knowing how to fix my life. I just kept ending up back up in the street. You know, and each and every single relapse always started with the joint. You know, it's crazy what weed can do to you. But, you know, I was, back in March, that's when I had my first mental breakdown. I went to go do drugs in the bathroom, and, you know, it wasn't even just the drugs, the track marks that set me off, you know, watching all this craziness happening around me. It was looking in the mirror that set me off. I couldn't recognize myself anymore. My face was sunken in. I had sores on my face, I had track marks on my neck, and I broke down, you know, and I decided to go to Detox. And, you know, that's when I heard about Teen Challenge up in Manchester, New Hampshire. They offered me to go down to Brockton, but I was like, hell no, I need to get away from Boston, you know, and I'll end up back in jail again. I don't want that. But, yeah, it was the best decision coming up here to Adult and Teen Challenge. You know, my life is changing for the better each and every single day. You know, all I can say is, like, people watching at home, kids, you guys, man, you know, if you have a friend, like, who's smoking joints, experimenting with alcohol, try helping them, but love them from a distance. You don't want to get sucked up in that life. You don't want to have that one girl influence you to smoke your first joint, drink. I'm not saying it's going to happen to everybody, but, you know, if people are at home, you are laughing at this, which I know some of you guys are probably high right now, you know, but just next time you're smoking a joint with your friends, there's more than 4 or 5 of you, one of those kids are going to die. One of those kids is going to end up in prison. And just remember how much you love your friends, you know. Build each other up, man. You know, don't tear each other down thinking like smoking weed's cool, popping pills are cool. I know it's getting worse and worse each and every single year. The influences from media and television and everything. It's not worth it, you know what I mean? Family's worth it, you know. You know, chilling with your mom more often, chilling with your father. You know, those are times like I wish I held on to it more, you know. I got separated from my family for so long. I haven't been part of my family for over like 10 years, and I regret it each and every single day. But, you know, getting clean, my family's getting restored back together. My youngest brother who did get cancer, he's been cancer-free for 12 years now, you know. And, you know, I'm just so fortunate to be, getting to be part of their life again. Got to see my younger brother Scotty for the first time in 4 years. Last time I saw him, he was like this big. Now he's like this tall, playing varsity football down in Billerica. And it's cool, you know. I'm starting to see the better things in life. There's better things than drugs. There's better things than alcohol. You know, and you guys can live your life to its fullest without getting drunk or getting high. You know, you guys can have a nice car. You know, you guys can have a nice family vacation, man. Because I stripped myself all away from those things, man. You don't want to break your mother's heart. You don't want to break your father's heart. You know, those are things I never even thought of because I was so wrapped up in my selfish emotions. So just take your life seriously, guys. You know what I mean? Because drugs and alcohol aren't worth it, man. You know, like I said, help your friends out, but love them from a distance.
My name is Dean Wells. Turned 21 a month ago, so quite a bit younger than most of my friends in the program with me. But just goes to show you that drugs don't. They can hit anybody. They can get anybody at any age. And for me, it didn't really even start on purpose. I kind of was I was on family vacation when I was a 7th grader. I was like 13, and my grandmother has scoliosis, which makes your spine kind of bend and not be straight. And so her spine looked like an S, and so she couldn't walk right, and it took her till 1 in the afternoon to get up every day. She was prescribed Vicodins, and she was taking Vicodins like candy throughout the day. And she doesn't remember our birthday. She's a couple months off with the cards and stuff. But so I was down there as a 7th grader with my little brother with me and everything. We were hanging out with my grandma. And I had like a really bad headache, and so she went in her purse, dug around to get me 2 Tylenols that she thought were Tylenols. They ended up being 2 Vicodins, and so as a little 13-year-old with no drug experience, I'm getting fed opioids, and that shook me, and was obviously at the time I was curious as to what it was and everything. It wasn't a bad experience. And so I went around taking ibuprofen and Tylenol, thinking that's what did it, and too young and naive to realize there was a difference between different types of pain medications. And but it was just sheer curiosity from accidentally being exposed to it. And so after that, I was digging through people's cabinets at houses and stuff, looking for because my friends were kind of the stoner kids from my school, and so they kind of told me, yeah, you definitely didn't take a Tylenol, and told me I probably took an OxyContin or a Percocet. And so I was scouring like my grandparents, my house, any house that I was at, just digging through the cabinets in the bathroom and stuff, looking for those any type of prescription, looking at the warnings on the side that says may cause dizziness, drowsiness, anything that said that, take it. If it did something, look for it again. If it didn't do anything, still probably try again. And so I was initially thrown right into prescription medications before even marijuana or anything like that. And it wasn't, my friends used to make fun of me and ask me, because I'd be taking Xanax and everything, I started getting those off of friends who were prescribed them when waves of that started happening. And then my friends would always make fun of me. Why don't you just smoke weed? And I'd be like, no, I didn't. It was because I knew I already had a love for the other stuff, and so I knew weed was so readily accessible that if I tried that, I'd never go back from it, and I'd just be doing everything all at once. So it took me until sophomore year before I even smoked weed, but I was doing as many prescription medications that I could all around there. And so about a year later, though, we went back down to Carolina for another vacation. Obviously, this time I had like a list written down of every possible medication it could have been. Dug around and ended up finding in my grandparents' drawer up in her room. Pulled the drawer open, and there was nothing in the entire drawer of the bureau but like half a dozen bottles filled with 300 Vicodins each. And so I just took a decent amount from each one. Ended up having about 300 left when I got home from Carolina. We drove, so it wasn't freaky for me to bring them back. And I ended up selling a lot to my friends, the stoner kids. I've always been a good salesman. I've worked in sales my whole life, which kind of fed into me being a drug dealer and everything, and selling prescription medications left and right. And so I got all my best friends addicted to opioids, or as 8th graders, coming back from that trip, just for my own selfish gain, because I wasn't old enough to have a job at that point, and so I was making decent money. I didn't even know what to sell them for or anything, but out of those 10 kids that I was the one who gave them their initial opioids for the first time, 4 of those 10 kids have passed from opioid withdrawals of different types to this day. And so that obviously really resonates with me, and you can't really get past. I mean, I've learned to get past it and everything through this program and everything, but it obviously still gives me nightmares and everything. Leighton, Dathan, Matt, and Aaron, I feel very responsible for their deaths and everything. So at that point, I was dealing with I was prescribed Adderall for my ADHD, which today I can sit still for 8 hours a day or 5 hours every day. We do work and everything, and I can sit still like I never was able to do. And so I know that I don't have ADHD. It was a bunch of doctors pushing that on me and everything. And so I was taking 60 milligrams of Adderall every day, which is like a prescription amphetamine. And so that led into me getting a lot of anxiety and everything, getting prescribed Xanax, not being able to sleep. I was taking Ambien and Lunesta for sleeping, along with all of those meds. And so through high school, I started selling all this stuff and was lying to my doctors, getting my doses up way past what was even my insurance would even cover for me and everything. And it was getting crazy. My life was becoming crazy, and I couldn't function. Was drinking 5 energy drinks a day on top of all of that. Then by sophomore year, I started smoking weed and finally just gave into it and was kind of looking at myself a little scared, thinking that would help me get off of the other drugs and everything. But in the end, it ended up quickly, within 6 months, becoming just another thing that I was in the mix and getting to the point where I didn't want to do any drug by itself without weed, or I didn't want to do weed without any of the other drugs, the Xanax or the Valiums. And so my parents started catching on to it, and so I had to stop smoking weed, stop taking any drugs that would really not get out of my system within a couple days. And so that kind of limited me to only certain pills, and then we had waves of acid coming through and mushrooms and horse tranquilizer, which ended up being my favorite drug, which is ridiculous now even thinking about that. But and all of those you could pass a drug test for, and so I'd be taking these like 36 panel drug tests and passing them because they didn't have the specific drug test that you had to buy for the ketamine or for the mushrooms or anything. And mushrooms and acid you can't even test for really, and so I just thought, oh, this is perfect, it lasts all day. I was grounded all the time, so like my fun times would be overnight on school nights, just sitting in my room by myself, tripping and hallucinating. And as Zach said, seeing himself in the third person. I've seen myself over 100 times in the third person. I've given myself high fives. I used to hang out with myself in the third person. It was extremely scary. But at the time, I was so lonely and depressed that I was my only friend. It was the hallucinating version of me that I was hanging out with. And so that led pretty quickly into my junior year, being a mess and everything. My parents stopped drug testing me because I was just, I was getting better at covering it up and everything. And then I eventually convinced my parents, even with society putting such a different view on marijuana and everything, legalizing it and everything. I eventually convinced my parents that, I can just let me smoke weed in the house, on the property and everything, so I don't have to be doing it out in places. And because they were never in support of drinking alcohol or anything, but I was able to convince them that weed was okay. And so I was smoking weed like there was no tomorrow, and spending all of my money. Even back then, I was spending over $100 a week, which was more than I was even making, so I had to buy double what I would actually use, sell half of it to be able to pay for more the next week, and then quickly turned into using the concentrate, the wax and everything. And then in high school, we could get the little dab cartridges that are like a little vape. They kind of smell fruity and stuff, so we were using them all day at school. I was getting terrible grades. Before I was even out of high school, I had thrown my life away. And it was all based around weed topping off of all the other drugs I was on. And I got deep into using nitrous oxide, like laughing gas, because you can buy it at regular vape stores and everything. I crashed my car 4 separate times while doing nitrous oxide under the influence of half a dozen other drugs all at the same time. right prior to coming into the program, I crashed my car on a bunch of all different stuff on angel dust and ketamine, and was taking research chemicals of Quaaludes, this methyl methacrylone I would buy. And I have no real memory of the crash other than crawling out of the car and everything, but it was just bits and pieces. And it wasn't until after that that I realized that I couldn't just limit myself to weed. My weed bone was attached to my alcohol bone, which was attached to my Xanax bone, and so on and so forth, and one couldn't function without the other. And so I was never satisfied without all of it all at the same time. And I got to this point where I was taking 10 different drugs all to get to the same effect. And once you get to that point, doing 1 or 2 or 3 drugs even just doesn't feel the same. And so you never want to just do 3. And fortunately, I never smoked crack. I never shot up heroin. And I did my share of cocaine and everything, but as Zach was saying, looking back, I never had a good time on it. It was literally powderized addiction, just going and going. And then I got myself to the point where I was convinced that I was doing better and everything, because I dropped down to taking only 3 or so Valiums a day, taking Adderall throughout the day, and then weed. Like, there was no tomorrow, using the concentrate and everything, and was using $40 a day at least of THC products all across the board. Had vape with me all the time. Had a different one that I could put the actual concentrate in. Was smoking weed with my friends at the same time. And to be honest, weed was the core of it all. And having access to several friends' parents' houses that thought it was better that they would allow us into their basement and everything to drink and stuff in their house. They'd buy us 30 racks and stuff because they thought, oh, at least he's under my provision and everything. He can't do anything that we don't know about. He's not out there drinking, driving around. But with any kid or adolescent, you give them an inch, they're gonna take a mile, and we did. We took 10 miles, and so in the end, I crashed my car and everything, and just had to really, finally, it took me losing my family, getting kicked out of my house, and all this happened 3 days after my 21st birthday. I drank myself into oblivion in 3 days, on top of everything I was doing. I had no tolerance for alcohol or anything at that point, and so I took it to the extremes right off the bat, because I was so excited for turning 21. And but it really was a smack in the face from reality and everything, that I couldn't even smoke weed by itself without winding up even a month later doing all this stuff back again. And as many times as I quit, and within a week was back to doing all the same stuff, that I realized that I couldn't do it on my own. And it took me losing my family, being excommunicated, and my little brother's 2 years younger than me. Is like he's like everything I worked for and lived for, is to be a good older brother to him and everything. And for the last 6 years of my life, the most important years of his life, I wasn't there at all. And it just really hurt me. My mom telling me that she would wake up every single day, and I'd be sleeping in until noon or so, and she'd wake up every single day and start cleaning the house and getting ready and everything, and not go in to wake me up, because she was just so scared every single day that she'd go in and not be able to wake me up. And saying that she even wished that some days that had just happened, so it would be the end of it all and everything. And it was just a dark point in my life, and I really it took me losing everything and more to finally realize that even weed and all of it is just no good, that I can be a better person. I don't have to have prescription drugs for every aspect to wake me up, to get me to sleep, to calm me down, give me energy, mood stabilizers. I don't need any, but I don't take anything for sleep. I don't even take melatonin or anything. And I'm a completely changed man already because of just not doing drugs and working working on myself really, and having a bunch of guys in the Adult and Teen Challenge program that really are there to just lift me up, rather than all my friends telling me, oh, you're such a, like, smoke the joint, and just always bringing me down. I've got people who are there to always lift me up, and when I'm having a bad day, they can see it in my body language and everything, and as exponential as the change is happening, it's just so much more to happen still. And so that's all I have, and thank you.
My name is Jordan Michael. I'm 29. I grew up, we all have a different walk of life that we took. I grew up in a close family. I pretty much had mostly what I wanted. Growing up until I was about 10 was awesome. Drugs were around my family a lot. So I held a lot of resentment, especially on my mother. When I was 10, I went into her purse to get some lunch money, and all I found were syringes and a lot of pills. It irritated my dad at the time. He was a corrections officer. And my parents got divorced at a young age as well, about a year after that. So I was the oldest of three. So as 12 years old, I was in the house a lot. My dad was working third shift, so I was really taking care of my younger siblings, making sure they got to school, making sure they got home, they got fed, and at the same time I was trying to manage myself. So I didn't have much of a childhood in that aspect of being able to do what I want and have my parents tell me what was good and what wasn't. By the time I hit high school, I still had the house to myself and not much supervision. I was smoking weed almost instantly, and my dad eventually lost his job, and then eventually I started smoking weed with my dad. I was drinking alcohol. I was having parties at my house on Monday nights while I was a freshman, and like they were saying, my house was that place for everybody to come over, because I was allowed to do these things. So I kind of definitely enabled a lot of people to go the same path as well. Like Dean, I feel responsible for most of my high school students to be where they are now and have these addictions. So that really just carried on through my whole high school. I was varsity in hockey, captain of hockey. I was very popular, so I wasn't doing it for attention. It was really out of curiosity to really what started it, because I saw everyone else doing it, and then I knew my dad did it, so I really wasn't thinking of the outcome it would have. But I don't know a drug addict that didn't start with marijuana, and I definitely started with marijuana, and I took it to the next level and the next level, and then after I thought I hit a peak there, I was more curious about the next thing, and I got arrested for the first time while I was in high school. They took me out of the high school in handcuffs. I had possession. I brought weed to school, and I was on probation for 12 months, but at the same time, I was still manipulating it. I was smoking weed after every drug test, because I knew I could smoke so much before the next one because of where I lived. They didn't want to travel out there. At the same time, I found out mushrooms weren't being tested, so I took mushrooms about 40 times in that 12 months, because I knew I could get away with it. So like you said, kids, to give us an inch, we're going to take a mile, and I did it every single time. I took advantage of my father as well. My mother wasn't around. She was also addicted, and I watched her die about 3 times. She's clean now. I grew up in, I had a child at a young age. I was 21 years old. I was a single father at the time. I was doing Percocets. I was getting Percocets from my dad. He was still feeding me those as well. Started from the marijuana and then went right to the next drug. If he was doing one, I was doing one. If I did one, he did one. So we really enabled each other. It went downhill after that. We moved out of the house that I grew up in my whole life. So I was thrown into another environment. At the same time, I was still with my dad, because that we did everything together. And he tried being my friend more than he tried to be my parent. So it was like I never had a parent at all. I just had a close friend, really. Not someone I could turn to with the problems I was having, with the abandonment I felt from my mother, and not knowing if I was good enough for my parents. And I really held it on me instead of what their issues was. So at a young age, I really took it to myself that it was me and it wasn't them. So I really did a lot of these things to hide the issues. It got to a point where that's all I was doing was Percocets, and after I got introduced to heroin, because the Percocets were getting different. I was getting fake ones, and so I just really went to what was cheaper at that time. And at the same time, I was doing the fentanyl and everything with my father as well. And really, like Dean said, like I wasn't worried about my parents coming in to find me dead, because I would have been dead with my parent. And I've had a lot of close calls. I've been arrested on felony charges for possession, and after doing drugs, you don't think clearly at all. All I was thinking about was how quick can I bail myself out so I can go do drugs. It wasn't even when can I get my life right, or when can I start doing the right thing. It was all about drugs. I mean, my life didn't matter. My son's life didn't matter. My dad's life didn't matter. I didn't care if he was a parent or not. I didn't need a parent at that time. There was nothing that was saving me. So I had to do it myself. I had to do a lot of things myself from a young age. I mean, everything just kept spiraling at that point. I really wish that I could have not used my parents, and really that he would have been a parent to me instead of trying to be a friend and really enable me. But I don't know what the thought process was on that. But again, I can tell you, I destroyed my life, and it was all because of starting with marijuana and smoking and thinking it wasn't a big deal. Because once you're doing something that is a big deal and you don't think it's a big deal, the next thing is just a small thing now. So everything just gradually turns into not a big deal. And by the time I'm homeless, I'm in the middle of Concord sleeping at the bus station, and I have a full-time job just to sleep in a car and to support my habit. I was living just to maintain breath in my lungs, really. I mean, at any moment I could have died, but it really didn't matter to me at that point. I did go to a detox for about a week, and I came out of there. It was good, and instantly when I come out, I started smoking weed. So I thought I was doing all right, but really, then I started drinking again. I also was taking methamphetamine at the time, mixing it with the heroin. So I was eating methamphetamine. I was doing fentanyl. I was spending about $400 a day. I was making about $1,500 a week. And I mean, I could have bought a nice house for that, but I literally was working to just support my habit, stay in motels and be homeless, sleep on the streets. I couldn't do anything without it. I wouldn't shower without drugs. I wouldn't eat without drugs. I wouldn't go to work. I mean, everything revolved around that. It wasn't even like I was living at that moment at all. I was really just kind of on like a cruise control, and I really wish I would have cherished a lot of the moments in my life, especially with my son. I was there for the birth, but I was still smoking weed, I was still drinking, and I was still taking Percocets. I was taking care of my kid, and I'm sneaking away to smoke Percocets or something like that. And that was just because of what I was portrayed as a parent. I got a parent that's doing drugs with me, so I'm doing drugs around my kid, and it really was just passed down from that. It is really rough to have a parent like that, and when they think they're trying to keep you safe and keep everything contained, but really they're keeping it contained for that moment, because down the road, they could do that every single night, and you're just going to turn into an alcoholic. You're going to turn into a drug addict. It comes hand in hand. If you do it every single day and think it's okay, you're going to think it's normal. And I thought it was normal in my family. I mean, I have uncles, I have grandparents, cousins that are all addicts. So it's really what I was around. So I saw it as a normal thing. The people I was going to school with were all smoking weed, we're all drinking alcohol. So I thought it was, what people did. I really wasn't looking at it at the real aspect of that. It wasn't good at all. And I really wish I never started doing it, because I would have done a lot of things differently. I really would have progressed in life, and I definitely wouldn't be here, but I really am thankful to be here, because I wish I had someone that would do this for me when I was in school, because I probably would have listened, and I probably would have got it right. And my dad, me and my dad, we have a relationship. He's actually in an adult and teen challenge as well. He's up in Maine. So we're both trying to get it right this time. And he does feel a lot of guilt for that, for what he did with me as well, and not being the parent and he holds that, you know, to his heart. But at the same time, it's hard to blame him when I know what drugs did to me. So I can only imagine what it was doing to him in his thought process, and not thinking that I was even his son, you know, just thinking that I was just another person around him doing drugs with him. So it was hard to have a relationship with someone like that, especially being under the influence of anything. I didn't know how to love him. He didn't know how to love me. I didn't respect him. He didn't respect me. You know, we were just pretty much two people, and that's about it. Like, I didn't look at him as a parent at the time. I just kind of looked at him as a drug dealer. And, you know, now, you know, I finally have a relationship with my brother and my sister now of being in this program. I haven't talked to my brother in about 3 years, and because he went a separate way as well. He moved out of the house and he left, so I was left with my dad. So I felt kind of stuck, really. I didn't want to leave him because he was my father in the beginning, you know. And I was 12 years old. I didn't know where to go. I was kind of stuck, so I really went to drugs for that false comfort. And that's really all it gave me, was false comfort and not being able to deal with the things that were really going on in my life. And I really wish I was able to deal with those things like the right way, the way a person should. Because I definitely would have done things a lot different, and I probably could have been able to help out a lot of my family, and especially a lot of my friends. There would have been, you know, less of my friends that have been dead. And that's really all I've seen since, you know, being around drugs, is just death and destruction on everybody's family. And you're not only hurting yourself, but you're hurting every single person around you. It's not just you. It hurts your family even worse than you're hurting yourself, because at the time you don't care that you're hurting yourself. And you know, we do a lot of like family restoration things, and it's definitely been awesome to do. So I can hear, you know, what my family was thinking and what they were going through, and stuff I didn't even realize what I was doing to them. You know, when, you know, my mom can definitely sleep better now where I am, because she's not wondering if, you know, she's going to text me and I'm not going to respond because I'm going to be dead. So as a parent, I couldn't imagine what the strain I put on my mom, and knowing that her, you know, her ex-husband and her son could be dead at any moment, and just waiting for the call, you know, that your son has passed away. And it started from pot. Never thinking, you know, in that time that this is where it was going to lead me. I thought I was just gonna, you know, smoke some pot, have a good time at that moment, but look back on it, it just gradually increased. And every time I thought I got better, the marijuana came right back into my life. And after that, within months, I was doing heroin again. It was just I couldn't do one without the other. Like Dean was saying, it just doesn't happen. As much as you want to say that, it just doesn't happen. And I really wish I did a lot of things different in my life, but I'm really thankful to be up here and being able to speak to everybody and let them know, you know, where it's going to lead you. Because I'm telling you, you don't want to be up here in the situation we're in. You don't want to go through the things that we've gone through, because not only are our lives, you know, destroyed, and now we got to start at the age of almost 30 years old and renew our lives, and our relationships with, you know, my son's 8 years old now, and, you know, I was there for the first couple of years, but I mean, I can't even tell you what he really looks like right now, because he's probably grown that much. And the fact that, you know, that really hurts inside me, not being there for my son, when that's all, like, he was the best thing in my life, man, and still it did not stop me. It didn't stop me at all. So I just wish I never did it in the first place. But I'm thankful to be here and being able to help other people so they don't go down the same path that we do. And just really thank you for having us, and, you know, just thank you for letting us share our story with you. We appreciate it very much.
Like I said, I work at Adult and Teen Challenge New Hampshire. I graduated the program in December 2014. I would like to say that I have been on a clean road ever since, but I actually had to come back to the program in August of 2018. I was incarcerated. I had 20-something charges from 2 different counties, several of which felonies, violating protective orders, deadly weapon, possession, and I honestly don't even remember how I got back there. I mean, I do now, but in the moment, I don't know how I got back there. I wasn't actually really prepared to share, because I thought I was going to be able to bring it up on, but we stand very strongly on our testimonies, because through our testimonies, that's how we overcome. We never forget what we were, because when we forget where we were, we're most likely to repeat. we try to have them share their stories so that it's not an open wound or a scab, that it's a scar that they can see and learn from and grow and actually use to help change other people's lives. So I haven't shared mine for 3 years. I think that was the last time I really shared my story. And I was over here trying to get them to go to like 15 minutes because they're pretty well trained of hitting all the good points between 3 to 5 minutes. And so I'm going to be the guy that's like, don't do the 40-minute thing. And so I'm going to apologize in advance. I'm not going to go 40 minutes, but just in case I sidetrack, I apologize in advance. So my story starts off, I grew up. Inside, it was a broken home. Outside, it looked like everything was awesome. My parents owned a business. My grandparents started a business. They came over from Greece, opened a tire shop in Laconia. My mom, family business. My dad actually lived there too, or worked there too. And but before I was even born, my father was an alcoholic. I'm the oldest of 3. He was very abusive. My only memories of him are in part. I think my subconscious actually protected my mind from everything I experienced when I was a youth, so I only have partial memories. Some of them are playing basketball at the YMCA, some of them are family trips, but then if I even really focus on certain trips, the further they go into the memory, they're not good. He's the type of guy that couldn't smell alcohol or he's out the deep end. My mom put up with him because he was a whole different person when he was sober, but the person that he was when he was inebriated abused my mom, abused us, molested my sister in front of us, and the last straw that had happened was after he had been away because he actually blacked out and left me and my sister in the house. We got picked up from my mother, and he hadn't actually reached out to my mom for 72 hours to see if she had heard from us. Didn't even know we were gone, and he didn't know how to tell her, and that was kind of like the end of the line. Again, my mom being the person that she was because she knows who he is when he's sober, didn't want to be the person to separate kids from parents because she knows the effects that had, gave him another chance. And when he came over, he was drunk. He actually unlocked the windows in the house and at 3 in the morning broke in trying to kidnap us, put my mother into a coma. And that was the last time I had ever seen him. The very little images and memory I have of my father, none of them are good. They all are damaging. He destroyed any kind of idea of family and love and hope and something to look up to. The idea of a father figure being something that you're supposed to grow up to be like and have an example is the thing that gives you confidence, at least for me, like what I was expecting, something that gives you confidence, something to stand for, or something to have a hope for, it was gone. And yet somehow the thing that was the least part of my life played the biggest impact in my life. I was the most insecure kid. I was an introvert. So going to school and stuff, I carried this complex that nothing ever bothered me, that I was always composed. I sometimes gave off the image that like not to mess with me because they just didn't know how I would respond because I was kind of like cold-faced, but that's just because I was broken. I experimented with pot for the first time when I was 12 years old, and my mom wanted to protect me from the world just because of what my father had become, so she was scared of life. And so all the way to high school, I remember having an 8 o'clock curfew and all this crazy stuff. So when I actually experimented with pot, I scared myself because it's like, oh no, if I come home, my mom knows I'm high, like my life's over. But in that moment, it actually did something for me. I can't pinpoint it, but what I felt when I got high, it was something like I'd never before experienced. But like I said, through high school and middle school, just very insecure. I just didn't know who I was supposed to be or what I was supposed to become. I got adopted in 8th grade, actually. So here I am getting adopted by my mom's new husband, and here I am still hoping that my father comes home. Despite everything that he had done to me, my biggest hope for in life was that my father would just come home. So I went to college in Philadelphia. I couldn't wait to get away. I had this idea that I was just going to recreate who I was. I was going to come up with a whole new personality because nobody in Philadelphia is going to know who I am. So I'm not going to be this scared little boy. I'm not going to be this person that doesn't know how to live. I'm just going to do and become what I perceived everyone would like. And what I became was the person that was like the spotlight of the party. If we were going out drinking, then I was going to be the person that did the stupidest stuff. I had somebody hang me out of a 2-story window just so it could do. I burned off the tips of my nipples with cigarettes. And again, all this crazy stuff that you would sit there and you're like, but it was literally just to get noticed. I just wanted people to know that I existed because I didn't feel like I was anything. Like I've had girlfriends, I've had friends, and nothing, they only fulfilled something for a small amount of time, because I was always looking for something else. I just wanted people to know that I was here. One night, through my drinking and partying experience, dabbling with pot, selling pot, just doing whatever was perceived as cool that you would see in the music videos, the rap videos, all this stuff, all the movies, How High and all that stuff, you know, like, that's cool. This is awesome. People are gonna like you if you do this. So I experimented with benzos. We were smoking pot, we were drinking, and I woke up in the morning face down in my puke, and the person next to me, which was my friend, woke up face up, and he had actually choked on his puke. So I actually held my friend as he died in my arms. And so, not really knowing how to cope with that, obviously survivor's guilt. I mean, here I am, a person that, like, why the hell am I even here? No one even loves me. So I live and he dies. The experiences I had with this guy, he was very cool and collected. He knew how to play drums, knew how to play guitar. Like, he's purposeful. Like, why would you take him and leave me? Like, I have no skill. I have nothing to live for. And I live. And so I came back home. I had to wait in Philadelphia for all the charges and stuff to drop, make sure I wasn't going to get charged with some kind of manslaughter or something like that. And I came back home to a group of friends, because I had a very small group of friends. They all lived on my street. And I thought that I could just kind of be normal and get my life right. What I didn't know is while I went off to school, and all my friends that didn't go to school, they stayed home and they all got into the same stuff. And so as I'm sharing my story, not really knowing how to share, I came into their apartment when I first got home, and I walked in and they had lines on a plate. And so me having PTSD now and all this trauma and stuff, I didn't know how to respond, because they were using Percocets and Oxy, and now I'm associating that anything that looks like nodding or falling asleep as potential death. I was a wreck, so I started dabbling in cocaine. Cocaine quickly turned to crack, which quickly turned into IV use, because it wasn't so much that I wanted to get high, I just didn't want to feel. And every time that I got sober, I would feel the old, and then I'd feel the recent, and then I would get disgusted in myself, and I'd just do more. And it just continued and continued and continued. And I ended up getting arrested in front of my grandmother's house. They pulled us over. She lived in a private community, and I was shooting up with a bunch of my friends. And so I got arrested for possession, intent, and paraphernalia. And they, because of how young I was, and they gave me an opportunity to go to treatment versus looking at prison time, not hit me with a felony. They didn't want to ruin my life at 19. At least they're giving me an opportunity. So I went to a program, year-long program, to get my life right. And honestly, I just did that because I didn't want to go to prison. I didn't even know what getting my life right looked like, because I still had all these deep-seated issues that I was afraid to even look at. So as I'm in treatment, all I was focused on was not going back to prison. Without even realizing it subconsciously, I just want to get high again. Previously to going to that program, I had actually met a woman, because I was actually using with her brother. She lived in Tennessee, and we met. She came up to check on him, and I ended up using her as a support line. She used me as the line, like, hey, is my brother still alive? Because she actually moved away from her family at a young age too, with her mom, because they were all, her father's side of the family were all drug addicts. And so we had this this relationship where she would just make sure her family was come out. Really, I was just using her for an outlet. Most of the time I talked to her, I was high or drunk, and I just was crying out instead of doing something, because I was the kid that was always suicidal, but never had the strength to actually go through with it. So I actually met her for the first time in treatment. She came out in December for Christmas to see her family, met her, and it was like love at first sight. And so when I got out of that treatment, I figured, hey, I'll move to Tennessee with her. I'll change my scenery. I'll change my friends. I'll, again, recreate myself, but be more honest this time. So maybe now I have a good start in life. And so I got out there, and I found the same group of friends. It was the same exact people, different faces, different names, but same person. Like, this person matched this person matched this person, because it doesn't matter how many times I changed my scenery, it had to do with my heart. And so I was a mess, and I was bound to find that exact same scenario no matter where I went. She got pregnant within the first month of me being out there, and so here I am, a mess, just a year-long treatment program, like a bubble on a hill, and now this woman's pregnant, and I come from my grandparents are devout Catholics, so the idea of getting someone pregnant without being married was just like no. So so here I am engaged, getting married, and I'm like, what? Here I'm 23 years old, and I was like, this is my life, and I didn't know how to cope, and I started using heavily again. Pot turned into Herc 30s, and then next thing I know, I'm in Tennessee driving around a bunch of 40 and 50-year-old men to pain management clinics, doing doctor shopping, getting paid in full scripts of 90 pills. And so I was doing 10 to 20 a day, but I had so many of them that I could kind of not be sick and kind of hide it. The times where I didn't have it, I started experimenting with methamphetamine because it would kind of take away the edge when I didn't have the pills. And then my daughter was born, and I thought she was the best thing that could ever happen to me, but I wasn't even there when I was there when the baby was born, and I was so dope sick that I had to leave. I didn't have a job, couldn't keep a job. Tennessee was very strict about drug tests and drug activity. Couldn't have anything on your record for 7 years to work at some of the awesome opportunities they have out there. They have an Amazon plant, they had all these car manufacturer things, but there was such a guideline to get in, and I had screwed up so many times I didn't even have the opportunity. So I'm working fast food at Taco Bell, and I can't even fold a taco. I'm snapping the hard shells every time I'm trying to make someone's dinner. Like, my life was miserable, and I was a stay-at-home dad. That was like my cop-out, you know. I'll be a stay-at-home dad, I'll get my life together, I'll become sober, and I couldn't even take care of my daughter. So Katie would go to work, I would be on the couch dope sick, my daughter would be in her little swing, rocking her, crying and screaming, dirty diaper, hungry, and I couldn't get off the couch to feed her. She would fall on her face. I would have to call Katie to come home and change a diaper, put her back in the car seat. We had no one else out there, and that you know, and when I had the opportunity to become a father, my biggest drive was I'm going to be what I never had. I was so resentful and so angry because I actually loved what I had and lost it. But I was so determined to be for someone what I didn't have that I lost focus of what was actually truly important. I became the exact same person. So I picked up a bunch more charges in Tennessee. I was looking at a 3-year prison sentence. They gave me the opportunity to leave the state to go back to New Hampshire. Just told me never to come back. So I left, never to come back. I went back to the treatment center that I initially was at, trying to get my life back together again. All the people that I had gone through the program with actually became staff, so that was one of those like humiliating, humbling, like I can't do this feelings. So I left, went and lived on my aunt's couch, selling cars at Auto Fair Hyundai. I was like, now I have a good job, sales job, I can save a bunch of money, I can do something with my life. I in like 2 months' time saved up like $2,000, most money I've had in a long time. Like actually felt like a purpose again. And here I'm trying to restore stuff with Katie, and she's like, okay, well, me and Berlin will come out to New Hampshire, we'll get a place together, we'll start fresh. And I was selling a car to somebody, and as we were getting ready to go into the test drive, he stood up and he had 2 bags fall out of his pocket. One was crack and one was heroin. And it was like this awkward interaction where we're staring at each other, and he was like, do you do this? Had this opportunity to be like, no, I'm a different person. I'm like, no, of course. I said, yeah, I do that. And I got it for free, and I got his number. And what was free once took everything from me in 2 weeks. And so she packed up her car, drove up from Tennessee. In this 2-week period, I got kicked out of my aunt's house for stealing her jewelry and her money. I ended up in a hotel. I was paying cash only at a hotel at Perimeter Road, Marriott, and I had gutted the room. So then I said that Katie was coming up with her family from Tennessee, so somehow, I don't even know how they did it, but they let me rent 7 rooms, just kept the do not disturb thing on each room, gutted 7 rooms. She got up here, realized that I was a mess, left in the middle of the night. I tried to keep re-renting the rooms because I didn't know how to hide my mistake, and here we are at NASCAR week where the rooms have already been previously booked out. And so now I was on the run for robbing from a hotel, for grand larceny, and all this stuff. They had called my mom. My sister actually worked at the Marriott, so now her job's in jeopardy. And my mom and my aunt put over $5,000 on their credit cards to keep me out of trouble. I don't know how much the dollar amount is, but they pretty much paid for the expense. I got a lifetime ban, never to come back. And somehow, again, something was always just kind of saving me from the trouble I should have been in. My family were the worst enablers. but I was also, it's only because I was a terrible manipulator. Like, I was the worst person. I just had so many things happen in my life, and instead of using them to become something different, I used them as an excuse to live the way that I was living and expected people to just accept that, and they did, which is, I mean, I can't change what I've done, but that's what happened. I used situations and circumstances that were out of my control to allow me to live a set life, to just be stuck right where I was at and do what I was doing, and everyone just kind of had to accept it if they wanted to love me. So it took, after all of these things that happened, my family didn't know how to help me anymore. Everyone kind of washed their hands of me, so I became homeless in Manchester. I was a homeless heroin addict, and I switched to heroin because I couldn't get anything else cheaper. You could get a bag, and I could make that last. I was waking up every day, robbing places. I'd get grocery lists from dealers to go into different stores to steal. And after all this stealing and stuff I did to support my habit, I actually ended up incarcerated in Valley Street for stealing Oragel because I had a toothache at Market Basket. Funny things that trip you up to kind of get your attention. I got released under the condition that I go to a treatment and get my life together, and the only place that would take me was Adult and Teen Challenge, which I had actually met the person being homeless, happened to walk by the sign that said "Giving Hope to Families and Their Addicts," knocked on the door, they gave me a plate of food, they kept trying to get me in, I wouldn't do it, and then incarcerated, nobody else would take me, and they took me. And it started off good. Like I said, I was there, I graduated that program, I actually worked there for a year, and I actually really started to deal with my issues. I actually found a way to forgive my father, but it was just a start, and so I had this kind of like freeing release of something that had kept me like in prison for so long, but I left it at that. It was still a sensitive subject, so instead of like really focusing on really getting like true freedom from it, I ignored it, and then I got ahead of myself. I had all these things going for me, and then I created expectations. I found something that I found purpose in, but then when the job and the career at Adult and Teen Challenge didn't line up with how I saw it going, for everything I did, I expected more, and it kind of created this resentment. So I left with this attitude that I was going to show them. Again, this still comes from a deep-seated issue from my father. I'm going to show you that I'm worth it, because what father walks out on a kid if they're worth it? And so I left, I started working 3 different jobs, I started my own business, all to prove that I could make all this money and give my family the stuff that I never had. I had another kid, and I was like, you know, I'm going to do right by this child, because I didn't do right by my first child. I get a chance to do it all again, and somehow I'm in this vicious cycle doing all the same crap, and I missed it. And one night I was working at the restaurant, and I got screwed over on tips, and I was angry, and I drove to go pick up my alcohol and cigarettes from a gas station right before the cutoff time, and I ran into an old friend, which actually happened to be Katie's brother, who was high. And I was like, hey, what are you doing? You want to hang out? Oh yeah, we're having a bonfire. I wasn't going for the bonfire. I can say subconsciously, I can say whatever. I knew that he was out of his mind, and I knew that I was looking for a release in the cigarettes and the alcohol. And I knew that what he had was going to get me there a lot quicker than what I was about to buy. So I went to the bonfire, hoping to find cocaine, got on methamphetamine one night, turned into the weekends, turned into every other day, and like, again, a 2-week cycle. I had lost my business, I got fired from every job. I started selling to support my habit. My family knew, but they didn't know, because meth kind of affects you differently than pills and stuff do. So I was active, I was always awake, I wasn't sleeping throughout the day, but I stopped going home. I started selling to support my habit, and eventually it just came to the point again where they're like, enough's enough. Katie got a restraining order because she didn't know how to help me, but she didn't want my kids being around that. I got to the point where I was falling asleep because I'd be up for months at a time, and she'd come out to put the kids on me, and she'd find me with a needle in my arm. There'd be spoons on the sink, and my kids would come out with a spoon in their hand. Like, I don't know how nothing more happened. I can't, like, I do not deserve my family. Let's just put it that way. Like, I have been blessed to get them back. I actually married Katie this year. I have my family as whole, but there's nothing that I deserve. Like, to be honest, if you want to know who I am, like, I'm a scumbag. I was the most selfish person in the world. Like, everything revolved around me. My kids, I could say that I love them, but I only love them because of what they did for me. You know, like, people helped me because they wanted to help them, and I took advantage of everybody. And it wasn't until I got incarcerated in 2018, after all this stuff tripped me up again, and I was alone with myself in a cell. It was just me and myself. I had no one else I could blame it on. I couldn't blame my father's situation. No one was there to listen to me. It was just me. And in that moment, I saw just who I was. I was this broken person that became everything I was so against, did everything I was so appalled of doing or so judgmental of others for doing, and I was able to see that despite everything, my father is human, and I wasn't there. I don't know what he was going through. I don't know the situation, but from my own shoes looking over, I could see where struggle and where life happened, and I was able to actually find real forgiveness in that moment. I can't say that the road has been pretty at all. I've had my ups and downs. I've had my episodes, but I have surrendered my life in a sense that like I just know who I am and I'm content with who I am. I found freedom in that, and my life is to, if nothing more, is to be a launching pad for guys to actually have the opportunity to never do what I did, or to get it now and not have to go through this repetitive cycle of hell and hurting everybody because it's such a ripple effect. Then this is my life, and I just want my life to be an example of what life still can be, even when all hope seems to have been lost. So, thank you.
Alex, first of all, I mean, I've known you for a couple of years through the PD. Everybody shares their story, and there's a lot of commonalities here, right? For everybody at home. Yeah, what are some of the commonalities we see, right? We have some mental health struggles, right? Some suicidal ideations. With the exception of you, everybody started with marijuana, right? I mean, that's an unfortunate, 7th grade, you end up getting, a perk, right? But that kind of leads into when we have drug takebacks through the DEA twice a year. A lot of kids will stock drugs in a medicine cabinet. So we want to get rid of those unwanted, unused meds. We all talk about the dangers of marijuana being a gateway, and everybody shared the same story, again, with the exception of Dean, that marijuana is a gateway. I have it in my own family with my own brother. That's another story for another day, but at the end of the day, marijuana, although it's legal in some states, federally it's still illegal. Still can't smoke marijuana legally. And there's not anybody I grew up with that has gone on to harder drugs that didn't start with marijuana. The mental health stuff, right? What's the definition of insanity, boys? To do the same thing over and over again, expecting different results.
Yep.
And when you're an addict and you have substance misuse disorder and you're taking drugs on a daily basis, what happens? It's insane, right? I mean, and you all come out with the same story. You go to rehab, you relapse, right? And the one common thing I heard tonight, and I'm sure everyone else heard it, was you came out doing well, but I'm only going back to smoke weed.
Yep.
And what happens when you just go back to smoke weed?
It just increases. You go to
It's a
something else.
ripple effect.
It's a ripple effect, right? That weed leads to maybe heroin, maybe DMT, and that's not a common drug up here.
No, it's not.
Mushrooms starting to be more common. We're seeing more of it on the streets.
Mushrooms and acid.
And acid. One of the dangerous things that I want to talk about is the illicitly made pills that the cartels are specifically pushing on our kids. They're targeting our kids, and that's what people need to understand. They're making illicitly made Adderall and Xanax, and the Adderall contains methamphetamine. Everybody up here talked about methamphetamine. That's a stimulant. You were up for months at a time. I'm not in the least bit surprised by that. You take a methamphetamine and it causes you to work like Superman, right?
Oh, yeah.
Concrete foundation, 6 days a week, running back and forth with forms in my hand.
With
I was
force.
walking around Boston with no shoes on during a winter snowstorm.
That's methamphetamine, right?
Yep. it's
Is that
methamphetamine
normal
for
behavior?
No.
It is for someone with an addiction, right?
you.
The average person out there sees it,
Possession.
yeah, possession, they're mortified.
We think we look normal. Somebody else. What's
Absolutely.
wrong with you?
Yeah, because it keeps you
What are
awake
doing?
and functioning, and so you think that you're, I'm not in that dazed out fog and everything, but in reality, you go to do one little project and you end up doing 100 projects in the way of getting that one done, and then you end up not even getting that one done. And you'll be sitting there trying to fix your refrigerator by yourself, and then end up just.
And you're not a
smoking all your
repairman,
food.
are you?
Yeah, exactly. I've taken my entire car apart with like 4 different people, all of us just tweaking out, and we didn't know what we're doing. None of us were mechanics.
There's nothing
And,
wrong.
and what else did we
There's
talk
nothing
about
wrong
prior to
with
this,
it.
kids,
Exactly.
right?
It's
We talked
mechanics.
about marijuana being laced with what?
Yeah.
Fentanyl.
Yeah.
And what else is being laced with fentanyl?
Every drug is laced with
Everything.
fentanyl. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. The dab pens are laced with fentanyl. Weed's laced with fentanyl. Crack's laced with fentanyl. They want everybody hooked to every single type of drug out there. I'm not saying all the pot's hooked with fentanyl, but
A lot of it is.
But a lot of it is. And if you're not getting it from the dispensary, there's a high chance that it is. And the reason why you're getting sick is because you're having fentanyl withdrawals.
And that's the sad part, right? So we've been monitoring overdoses for the last, I don't know, 7, 8 years. And we always say heroin was the cause. Reality is a lot of it's fentanyl, but we didn't know any better as law enforcement. We didn't know any better in the state labs. So now what's happened, those illicitly made pills, Xanax, that the cartels are pushing, are made with fentanyl. So at the beginning of this, about 10 months ago, when the DEA realized that illicitly made Xanax were containing fentanyl, 26%, based on the DEA labs, was showing that it was a fatal dose. 26%, 1 in 4 pills. Fast forward till today. Now the DEA says 2 in every 5 illicitly made Adderall is a fatal dose. So pick any 2 up here out of the 5 that are going to take a pill. Chances are 2 of them are not going to wake up. Now with fentanyl, as you know, we've talked about Narcan, right? We've talked about Narcan, and what that is, it's an opiate antagonist. So that blocks the receptors of the brain that get you high, and it allows you to wake back up. And everyone that's used heroin knows what's the best high you ever had. That first time, right?
Yeah, I was chasing.
What's a close second? When you get Narcan?
I mean, Narcan, you get Narcan, it's hell. When you
It's-
get
right?
Narcan, you get
But your high
instant
was just about
withdrawals.
there, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, man. I've been Narcan, and I wake up like a mile away, not even knowing what happened.
Yep.
Limping, blood, face is covered in blood, have an egg on my head, smash my head on a wall.
And not
Not even knowing I even got Narcan, just like thinking of it as normal, walking backwards to figure out what the heck happened, finding out that I just got Narcan.
But at least, like we talked about earlier, right, what did you say? At least Narcan saved his life.
Yeah.
And it's that blanket, that safety net.
Yeah.
All right, I can use as much as I want, even if it's fentanyl, it's gonna save my life. What Narcan doesn't work on is our next drug threat, which is methamphetamine. That's a stimulant. It's not an opiate or an opioid. So Narcan is an opiate antagonist. It does not work for methamphetamine. So if someone decides to overdose on meth, there's no magic formula that brings you back like Narcan does. It's scary when you think about it. And each one of us had a nice conversation prior to starting this, which again, I want to thank Tracy and Jess and BeBold Bedford for hosting this. And, in my opinion, not just this town, but in every community, these gentlemen from Teen Challenge need to speak at an auditorium full of kids. This should be part of every school curriculum in the state, because New Hampshire was as hard hit as anybody in the country.
Highest overdose rate not too long ago.
That's right. One of the highest overdose rates per capita in the country. West Virginia's up there. The problem is, how do we get the public to come out and witness these gentlemen telling their very personal stories about their battles with addiction and their personal stories of what started them on that journey? This is why every auditorium should be filled and mandated with every kid. You want a parking pass in Bedford? Pretty simple. Let's ask Mike Fournier and challenge him today. Let's make every parent and their kid attend something like this to get a parking pass, right? This is what we need to do as parents. I have 4 kids. 2 graduated from the school district, 2 in it. And I care not as a law enforcement guy or retired policeman, I care as a father, right? As a coach. I care about every kid in this school district. And I want to talk about a couple things. Fatal overdoses, right? You've been around, you've seen your buddies die. What we try to tell kids is there's a Good Samaritan law here in New Hampshire, and that Good Samaritan law protects you. So if you and him are together and he has a near fatal overdose, or you can call, and you're not going to get in trouble because of the Good Samaritan law. Why is that important?
So then we actually call.
Because we don't want anyone dying, right? Those are our kids. Those are our friends, our neighbors, our teammates. You're a hockey captain. I love the fact that the athletes think they're immune to this. Are athletes immune to drugs?
They're the higher, more apt to use them.
Right? I mean, you're an athlete, you stay in shape, you eat right, you work out. what's gonna happen? You're no different than anybody else. I don't care if you play an instrument, play in the band, or play in the football team. Anybody that has an addictive personality is prone to addiction. And and Tracy's heard it a million times, we all have a light switch in life, right?
Yeah.
My brother, the minute he tried drugs, turned the light switch on, he could never shut that off. Never. I would venture to guess all 5 gentlemen up here today have a light switch that once it goes on, whether it's alcohol, cigarettes, heroin, weed, can you shut that light switch off?
No.
That stays on forever, right? So I just want to thank everybody for coming out here today. Alex, Zach, Chris,
Yeah.
Dean, and Jordan, I want to thank, get some tough handshakes here. I want to thank everybody for coming out because it's not easy to share your story, especially with perfect strangers, and then you have the audience at home. And I hope and pray that everybody's watching this at home. I'm sorry if I challenge somebody, but I think we need to get more people in seats to listen to the stories. These are powerful stories. This is heartfelt. This is not make-believe. And don't think because we live here in Bedford, we're immune to this. We're not. This is everywhere. Thank you, gentlemen. I greatly appreciate it.